Whatever you're hoping to get, no matter what it is, from this meeting, from any meeting, from any book, from any teaching, from any speaking, from any experience, you won't get that. You will not get that, whatever you're hoping for. Whatever it is. Isn't that dreadful? This is the most wonderful, wonderfully dreadful news. You cannot get whatever it is you fantasized that you could get. There is no possibility. There are no possibilities. This isn't a possibility. This is. Possibilities are pure fantasy, just imagination. There is nothing to come. There's nothing that has been. There is nothing that will be. So, unsurprisingly, this isn't popular. All popular stories are stories of hope. But there is no freedom in hope. Hope is imprisonment. Hope is disappointment. So you can't get what's on offer. I'm offering what is, which isn't on offer. It is already. This is as it is. That's all there. That's why it can't be a teaching. Because I can't teach you this. No one can teach you this. No one can show you this. But it's worse than that. It's that no one has this. This can't be had. What is already attained is unattainable. You can't, there is no attainment. And so all the stories, all the fantasies that you may have entertained of enlightenment, of liberation, of awakening, they're all redundant. You can still entertain the story. That may still happen. That's just what's happening. It's not going to happen. Nothing will happen. So all that's left is this. I use the word this because I can't find a better word. There is no this that can be found. There is no this from that. All of that is this. All of this is that. It's just simply that you're not that. It's not that I am that or I am this. There is no I to be either. simply no I. And if there's no I, there's no you. You only exist for me. You're only in relation to me. And in an absolute sense, there are no relationships between two selves. And maybe the greatest paradox of all, relationships are so much easier. Relationships naturally between two human beings are much easier with ourselves, without it being between me and you. I can't know you. You've never known another. The illusion that you know other selves is because you suffer under the illusion that you know yourself. And maybe, like me, you spent a long time trying to know yourself, trying to find yourself. And you weren't successful, otherwise you wouldn't fucking turn up here. That's for sure. That's a certainty. Anyone who's found themselves does not turn up at a non-duality meeting. They just don't. And if non-duality means anything, which it doesn't, essentially it doesn't mean anything, but there is an aloneness that is obvious.
In what way? What do you mean?
It's that there are no others. Without you, there are no others. There are other human beings, but not other selves that you might know. The whole illusion is that you know someone else because you know yourself. If it's undoubted that you don't know yourself because there's nothing to be known, then you're not looking to know others. It's not possible. And so it simply dies. It doesn't really die, it just doesn't appear. And there's great freedom in that. How hard have you tried to, how hard in relationships has it been that your friend or your lover says, well, if you knew me, you wouldn't act that way. Well, I don't know you. It's, or how hard have you tried to show the other your true self so that they really would know you? How much have you longed to be known? Maybe that was just me. But I think that's almost universal, this longing to be known by another, to be seen by another. That was certainly how it was for me. And no wonder it was torture, because it's impossible. No one's ever seen you. No one will ever see you, could ever see you. There's nothing to be seen. Wonderfully empty. Dreadfully, wonderfully alone. This alone. This is all. It's hard to know how to put it. I wouldn't say it's obvious to me, but it's obvious.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. Without any doubt. I don't doubt. I mean, how can you doubt that you know that? I mean, surely the obviousness is so obvious that you don't know it. I guess it's not obvious that you don't know yourself. when there's a conviction that you do know yourself. But the knowing another, I mean, that's pure speculation. And every self knows this, but the need to know another for others to be real selves, like myself, another self, is so great that delusion is very powerful, that for most human beings it goes unquestioned, I think. Because I infer yourself from myself. You know, I know I'm me, so therefore I can project that I know you.
What about doubts in general? Does that occur? Or does it have a different flavor? Doubts as in, should I do this? Should I do that?
Oh yeah, doubt can still occur, but it doesn't seem like the issue it was when it was life or death. So doubt occurs, but I don't doubt that, or there's no doubt that it doesn't matter really. It's the really, because one of the other things that self has is, because it's so important to me, everything, because doubt is really about decisions, isn't it? About, you know, or what's true, and what's the best course of action, or the best thought, or what's the best choice. It just happens really naturally, as it does for you and anyone else. But of course, then there can be, the more I think about it, the more I question it, the better the decision, the outcome will be. You know, think before you speak, think before you act. I mean, it's very heavily conditioned, all of that. It's bullshit. Because it's, what it infers is that you, by thinking, you will work out what the best outcome will be in the future. Well, if there's no future, it's kind of redundant, isn't it? So it tends not to. But there can still be doubt, yeah. Any thought can appear. I mean, in an absolute sense, nothing is down to you. So in the absence of the sense of I'm doing anything, nothing is really any different. Anything can still happen. I would say never listen to anyone if they say, you know, this is how it is here, so that's how it will be. Well, there isn't a how it will be. So it's all nonsense. There is only how it is. And how it is unique to every human being, obviously. There isn't a how it is in an absolute sense. How it is complete. There's no greater paradox in speaking about this than the individuality of each human being is more pronounced, not less, without it being theirs, in their individuality. So in a very real sense, without this being my life, what I called my life is liberated from being my life. And all the parameters and that I put on that. No one has a life. Just life.
Tim, is there any doubt that there is still a me?
No, not at all. There's no doubt. Yeah, but there's no doubt that there was a me.
There's no more doubt that someone is going to know that there is no me. Right?
There's no doubt that if this sounds really ridiculous. There's no doubt that if your me no longer appears, there's no doubt that you won't notice. So I didn't recognize the absence of myself. I mean, maybe that's the biggest joke of all. If you've been following this, whatever, radical non-dual shit, if you've been following this, then you've been waiting until you recognize the absence of yourself. Well, who would do that? And how would it be recognized? So no, there is no me to die. So the only thing I can talk about is the seeming dying, but not the death.
What never existed can't die.
Correct. Absolutely not. But in a very real way, if I try and remember how it was excruciating in the seeming. I felt I was dying. I felt I was being killed, actually, more than dying. I didn't know what was killing me, but I guess the words I used as life was killing me, but it felt like I was being killed. And then that stopped, but that wasn't the recognition of my death or the absence of myself, not at all. I'd be very surprised anyone who speaks about that. I have heard a few, but it seems odd that you would speak about something that wasn't being absent. And it is a joke. I mean, if you're waiting, like I was waiting until I knew the absence of myself. Well, if I wasn't there, I wouldn't notice, would I?
It was just pure fantasy all along. What you were.
Well, I think if it was just pure fantasy, it wouldn't have been so convincing. Yeah. It's very
it's embodied.
Very embodied, yeah. So really the only thing I noticed was the absence of some of the symptoms of, well, for a start, there was all the fear had gone. But I mean, it was extreme because I went from terror, because I felt I was dying, to what initially felt like total emptiness, just emptiness. That was the experience of it. But with that, total peace. But it was in contrast to terror, so I think the contrast made the peace so, and I think it's exactly the same. This is at peace. Life's at peace. There is no war. I go to war. There is no war. Life's not at war with itself. Call whatever we're going to call this. Life's the easiest for me. Because there isn't anything that's not life or this or whatever other word seems most appropriate or resonates for you. It doesn't matter what words you use, but there's nothing, there is no conflict because there's nothing else. So conflict only exists in two-ness. So when life isn't even one. It's just no conflict. There's just not one and another. Life is essentially easy, but it's not easy for me because it's not. Look at the demands I make. I'm so demanding that life turn up how I want it to. So it's constant disappointment, constant in conflict with, and by life I mean what's happening. What's happening needs to match up to my expectations of how it should.
Tim, when you use the word peace, you're not only referring to a feeling, right?
I'm not really referring to a feeling. I know that sounds. No, all the feelings are at peace. Anger is at peace. I know. That's radical. But yeah, everything is at peace. Everything that appears. All feelings. I'm not talking about peace as in it's normally used, as in, because, there could be What's appearing is conflict, but that's at peace.
There's no like shoulds and shouldn'ts.
Well, that could appear as well, yeah. Because you want to know, so, you know, without me, will it be the same or different? Well, this is always the same and always appears different. So the appearance constantly changes. What doesn't change, you can't speak of. So when I've spoken of it, or when I try and speak of it, I say silence rather than the sounds. And it can be that the silence can be deafening, that you can only hear the silence and all the sounds are silent. In the same way, everything is full, so that the fullness of all appearance, visual appearance, is completely empty. You can't see the emptiness, you can't hear the silence. And yet, it can be overwhelmingly obvious that all the sounds are silent sounding and all appearance is emptiness appearing full. It won't make sense. It's not rational. Because logic and rationality, they're dualistic. So it won't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You won't make sense of this. It's not like I came to all my years of studying and getting excited every time the Amazon delivery came through the letterbox and there was another book and I devoured it. It's not like all of that came to a fruition of complete understanding. It's quite the opposite. What was obvious was all of that, all of my studying, all of my effort was for nothing. Simply because this doesn't require any effort, does it? Are you making any effort for this to be as it is? No. Now there can be seeming effort, but it's regardless. It's of no significance whatsoever. Whether there's effort or effortlessness, again, it's equally empty. They don't mean anything. So all meaning is meaningless. All purpose is purposeless. It's all empty. That doesn't mean it doesn't appear still. It still appears. So what? There is an overwhelming so what about what most human beings take as a matter of life and death. Life isn't a matter of life and death. Life or death. Simply because this is life and death. Death isn't somewhere else. This is as dead as it's alive. Emptiness is dead. It's inert. And that total void is teeming with life, is full, overflowing. But most of all, it's just not somewhere else. That's really why I speak about this. You've always been looking somewhere else. You will always look somewhere else. Self can only look somewhere else because self is the whole sense of this isn't it. This isn't good enough. This isn't complete. The sense of incompletion and what I've called me are one and the same energy, one and the same drive to complete, to become whole, to be at peace, really. Wholeness and peace is the same feeling, same sense. All you have of dreams is if you remember them or not on waking.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a matter of fact, what do we know of dreams? What you remember on waking. And I don't know how it is for you, but my sense of dreams are not the same as waking memory. It's got a very different...
Maybe I misquoted it.
No, well, this is often in traditional Advaita, and this is often referred to as a dream. This is the waking dream, and then there's a sleep dream. But if this is all there is, then reality is a better word. Because if real means anything, it can only mean, and this is all there is, then of course this is completely real. And dream infers that you can awaken from the dream to reality. So I don't refer to this as a dream. Because then all you're going to do is wait till you wake up and go to a teacher who'll teach you how to wake up. Well, I want to say to you, and I feel this passionately, that there is no waking up. There's no one to wake up. Who would wake up? Who would be dreaming? There is no dream. There is no awakening. There is no dreamer. Now, if you want, you could call this the dream. There is only the dream without the dreamer. But why call it a dream if it's... For me, it doesn't make any sense to refer to all that is as a dream. Maybe the only way I'd use it is that there's the dream of self. But you don't awaken from that, so I wouldn't call it a dream. But there is a dream of my life. The dream of me. And then the dream of you, of course. And there's a lot comes with that. With the dream of me comes the dream of volition and personal power and making the right choices and fate and destiny and lots of other dream stories. But most of all comes anxiety. That's a neurosis. That's what mainly comes from me. My fear that time is short. I've already made a lot of bad decisions. Look how shit my life's been. And I need to get it right now because fucking hell, time's running out. Well, wonder of wonder, time isn't running out. What if you've never wasted your time? What if you've never used your time wisely? Everything is just what it is. But even that's saying too much because you just don't know what it is. This isn't going to tell you what things are. This isn't, you're not going to gain anything. There's nothing to be gained. Seemingly, there's everything to be lost. But actually, there's nothing to be lost. Because there's nothing to be gained. You already have nothing. Because there's no you to have anything. And there aren't actually any things. There's no one, you aren't in possession of anything. Everything that you've said is yours is not. So it can feel... When I talked about how the experience of the dissolution of myself felt like I was being killed, it was like one by one, sometimes massively, sometimes subtly, everything that I felt in control of that was mine seemed to just be taken away. And it was like my hands were, it's funny you say about hands, because holding on is what, the sense of me is a sense of holding on. It certainly was for me. But of course, if you haven't got any hands, I mean, if your hands are taken away, and that is really how it feels. You cannot hold on. There is nothing, you have not, because my image of holding on was there were, you know, you're falling off a cliff and there's vines to hold on to. It's not that there's no handholds, there's no hands. I mean, you're fucked then, aren't you? I mean, without handholds or footholds, it can feel like I'm going to fall. But without feet and hands, you're screwed. Yeah. You could try using your teeth. You will try, of course, and self will try anything or hold on, I guess. But there is nothing to hold on to. There's nothing.
You said you had no hands, no feet, you couldn't hold on.
Yeah.
And you were scared. And how did it happen that scared to be becoming empty?
So that's the now if I knew that, I would be packing out auditoriums, wouldn't I? I'd sell that shit. That, you know, you're probably going to be the wealthiest human being on earth if you could sell that. If I knew how it happened and could give you a method. And
But you stopped being scared at a certain...
no, I didn't. I mean, but there was stopping being scared, yeah. Or it just didn't appear anywhere. There was just no... I mean, you may already know that you're really just afraid. You're afraid for yourself. All fear is for you. So if if it's for your friend, you're just afraid how you will feel if your friend, dies. If you're afraid for your children, you're just terrified how shit it will be if my kid's ill. For yourself. Self is utterly selfish. It's all about me. Everything. The whole of all there is just filtered through this sense of how does this affect me? How will this benefit me? How will it harm me? It's all about me. Wonderfully innocent. I mean, you didn't choose to be you. Now, don't get me wrong, isn't it? Like self is just as choiceless as everything else. You didn't choose when we've got a lovely baby here today. In a year's time, she's not going to choose to develop a sense of being herself. It's all innocent.
But what about the sense that it's real? Well, it's real to me, right?
It's real, yeah, this is completely real.
Yeah. Right.
So this is really happening. But it's not really happening. Because when I said this is really happening, where is that? There really is nothing to hold on to. This really is. So what we call, if you've listened to other speakers, nearly everyone talks about there's only appearance, what's appearing, what's apparent, what seems to be happening, just what's happening. But there isn't even that. Not even that. And that is all there is. And there isn't even that. You don't get that either. So you want to hold on to something. Self will do anything. Give me something to hold on to. So just what's happening. We'll try and find just what's happening. See how you get on. You've probably tried. Can you find it? What's happening? It's already happened. If you find it, it's not what's happening. It's happened. It's gone. The thought is what's happening, that I found what's happening. Not the what's happening that the thought is thinking about. Is dead. This appears and disappears with no space in between. That's no time. That's no space. That's the absolute. This is absolutely birth and death. You could say simultaneously, but that's not true, because there's a word in time. Birth and death without, they're not two. There's no, so where do I live? Where do I find what's happening? I can only find anything in the space. And there is no space, there's only space. So this is just space. So where is the space in space? You know, there's no space between that space and that space. This is the space between. That's how this is. You won't find what you're looking for. It's the most wonderfully liberating, but utterly dreadful news. Whatever you're looking for cannot be found. Isn't that wonderful? It is wonderful, honestly. It's just wonderful. Because there's the utter futility, the total, absolute futility of the search can be undeniable. And it's dead. Like just decapitated. All of the search. And that was all the suffering. Now, I don't mean pain, I mean suffering. Suffering, pain is natural. And by pain, I mean physical bodily pain, but emotional pain. We're just animals, for fuck's sake. But we've got so grandiose. Self is so grandiose in its self-importance that there must be more to it than being just a, big-headed ape. Well, what if we're just really clever chimpanzees? Very social animals. So you thought relationships were between you and me? No, they're just what social apes do. They like being together. They like meeting. They like grooming each other and picking fleas off each other and eating them. That's just one of mine. But life's very simple. It's much outrageously simple. Being is simple. Being me is complicated.
So it's just really simple.
Hmm?
It's really simple.
Yeah, it's too simple.
Yeah.
But it's paradoxically simple. So it's irrationally simple. But it is too simple. I mean, this is beyond simple. There's no beyond. That's not true either. But too simple to be able to get it, and utterly paradoxical, which, of course, what we call the mind, thought can't approach it. So if you think you understand when you listen to when talking about everything and nothing, not being two, if you think you've got that, that's not true. And you could say that's the liberation. The liberation is that it isn't possible to attain. That's the freedom. There wouldn't be any freedom if some human beings could attain this and others couldn't. Where would the freedom be? There's no freedom in that. This is completely free. Because it's unattainable.
And it is already, right?
Is already. Isn't already. You can't understand that this is and isn't equally. Because it's nonsense. This is nonsensical to the one who wants to make sense of what's being said. And that is the freedom. Freedom from that constant, I need to make sense. If only I could make sense of than whatever you've imagined. So I could speak about this as not knowing or unknowing, but that's equally not true, because that can sound, or it can be heard, that you will know that you don't know. Well, that would just be more knowing. There's no knowing that you don't know. There's no knowing of not knowing. The reason I say that is a lot of people speak to me about not knowing. Well, it's okay for you because you're in not knowing. No. It's more like whatever is known about this, it's very obvious that it's about this. It's not this. It's about this. So every scrap of knowledge that you have, every morsel of understanding is about not the actual. It's about. And knowing about something is not. And that's the same with everything. So, whether it's a car or a bird or the weather, knowing about the weather is not the weather. Knowing about the sky is not the sky. Knowing about human beings is not a human being. In the relative, and then in the absolute, it's all worthless, all knowledge, all understanding. You could say it's just for entertainment, if you find it entertaining. But I don't know about you, but this search, this pursuit was not for entertainment. That was playing a game. This was life or death. This was... you could mock everyone who had their pathetic little pursuits that they liked to do and thought were important, whereas you were on the grandest of pursuits, to find the truth, to find reality. Not just a truth or a reality, but the truth, the reality. So this isn't the truth. The truth is only relative. It can be obvious that human beings are, it's another lovely human idea. The truth.
Like everybody has a different truth.
Yeah. You may have found that when you talk to people. And this isn't a denial of that. Every human being will have what you could say is their own truth, but it's just not theirs. There is no owner of that. No one possesses the truth. And of course, how could the truth be absolute if it's just confined to each human being? That's all it is. It means no more than that. One of the things I haven't really mentioned is love. And one of the things that I might talk about this as unconditional love is that it's, again, I don't know how, don't ask me how. It's very obvious that no one human being has any more knowledge of this, understanding of this than anyone else.
That's a relief.
And that really is unconditional love. Because this isn't, I don't have any wisdom to impart to you that if you took on board, then you too could share that. No, because there isn't anything to learn.
Right.
And it can sound like this is an unlearning, that you have to unlearn something, but that's not true either. It can feel like that, but in an absolute sense, that's not true. It's not even an unlearning. But I know what you mean. The setup of, you know, someone sitting at the front and you listening seems like I've got something to say.
Something important to say.
Yeah, it's not important. But there is, I mean, everything is empty, and so the sense of emptiness does lay everything flat. In an absolute sense. There is no higher or lower. So, although it appears I'm higher because I'm sitting at the front, that's not true at all. There are no special ones. No matter what Cristiano Ronaldo says. Now, there are special ones in every field of every pursuit of human endeavor. There are special ones. But not in this. Just human beings. And the laying flat, the absolute equality of everything is not just between human beings, it's everything. Everything is empty. Essentially. Empty of value, empty of meaning, empty of purpose. And that can feel devastating when to the one who's relied on meaning and purpose in order to have, okay, so what's the point? What's the point of life? And it doesn't sound loving, certainly not to most people who hear it, that there isn't a point to life. It can sound utterly nihilistic, but it's not. It's quite the contrary. Life is utterly free. The point, if the conviction in life has meaning and purpose and a point, is the imprisonment, is the narrowness of life. You know, it's the antithesis of freedom. There's no space when there is only space.
What will happen when Tim Cliss dies?
Well, your guess is as good as mine.
You don't know?
No,
Great. Really great.
no, not at all. I mean, talk about the grandiosity of self is astounding. That, I mean, how many different ideas are there about what happens? If every one of those ideas is seen for what it is, which is an idea. Do you want me to guess?
No.
I can guess.
I want you to guess.
I can guess. Nothing. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, who would know that? I can't believe anyone talks about life after death. It was just, for me, and we're talking about, you know, millions and millions who are experts in life after death and what happens. All religious people are experts in it. Like they've been there. Oh, and there's plenty of people who have been there and you know,
What's that?
reincarnation, yeah. So they know who they were in previous lives, and they know who they were when they weren't in a previous life but were dead. I mean, it is funny, it's laughable, but I mean, we're laughing, and that's much more common than listening to this nonsense. I just can't believe anyone would. For me, it's just all of those, they're just ideas so that, because I'm just desperate not to die.
What if people have experiences of that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know people who have been dead and they can talk about what happened.
Yeah.
What's that?
I've no idea.
Okay.
I'm suggesting they weren't dead. You know, the human being wasn't dead.
Yeah. But it seems like it's a similar thing going on. There's been like books
Mm-hmm.
written about it.
But the obsession with it, I just think the fascination with it, I mean, they're big sellers, unlike non-duality, which is, that's a big seller because I don't want to die. It can't be, the death of this body can't be the end of me.
I think it's something you learn, because when I was a child, I was drowning.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like everything fall apart and there was nothing. And there was something light or something. But when I didn't think about that when I was a kid, but then I started to read books and listen to stories and so on. And then I started to make a story about what happened. And I think it's like that. I think some people have had that experience that something is a fall apart somehow, and then we make it to a big business.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it also that the me wants to have the hope to survive?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's all I'm about, really. So I can't imagine not being me.
I have another one.
Yeah.
Another stupid one, probably. I don't care in that sense, but is there a God? Something outside this?
No, absolutely not.
How can you know?
I don't know. But you asked me.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing outside. God's for me, to look after me, to answer the questions I can't answer. Self can't bear not being able to answer all the questions, so I know there is a being that can answer all questions and is the answer to all questions. It's great comfort to me. So God's very rational for self.
But could it be like, for example, before the awakening, there was no idea about that could be, it was completely, for most people, it's like nothing they even think about.
Right.
And suddenly, wow, new dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Or could it be like, for example, a cat? I know it sounds stupid now, but imagining for a cat, how to be a human being, it would have no idea because it's bigger than being a cat. It would probably say it's a cat walking on two legs. And I think, what I'm thinking is like, is it possible that there is a limitation to this that you see as unlimited? That it is a part of something, there's a thing around it that you cannot comprehend? I know it's philosophy, but it's just...
Yeah, well, yeah. Why not?
Yeah, okay.
But
It doesn't matter,
But you asked me, and no, definitely not.
Okay.
No, I don't have any sense that there are dimensions. This is all dimensions and no dimension. If there's a sense, if there's an experience of another dimension, it's an appearance of this, isn't it?
but like suddenly you felt that you had no arms and you
Mm-hmm.
were afraid, and it appeared that there was a, what would you call it, where you are now without being you, right? Could it be that it could happen again, but in a different way? For this,
No, you asked me. No, absolutely not. So no, because that didn't happen. None of that happened. There's no awakening that happened. Everything I've told you about my story is just the same as you telling me your story. None of that happened. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened. The whole of history, your history, my history, my people's history, my family history. There's a clue in the word. Stories. We're storytelling creatures. We like stories. And stories create time. That's all stories are. Stories make time. There is no time without stories. Take the stories away. What is there? And I mean all stories, everything, including all this non-duality shit. Just remove it all of it. What is there? You don't know, do you? You don't know anything. That's what I'm speaking about. Now, the stories don't have to disappear. They can just be, very obviously, stories about what happened. They aren't what happened. You only have to share your story of what happened yesterday when you were out with your friend. And she goes, oh, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? That's shit. That's not what happened. I mean, that's how reliable stories are. And that's all they are. And that is the whole of the past. And take your story away from, remove the story from yourself. So nothing ever happened and nothing ever will happen. Just what's happening. And even that is just what appears to be happening, what seems to be happening. That's all there is. And I call it this, it's not this. There's no this.
So this meeting is just completely meaningless.
But stories of meaning just appear, just naturally again. So it's not that there won't be any stories of what this means,
Yeah.
but without that meaning, the trouble is, meaning for me needs to be true. It needs to be, you say what something means to me and I disagree. I'm going to defend my meaning of what happened to the death, probably. I mean, throughout us, all conflicts are about meaning, about truth, about belief. And it might be obvious that beliefs are just ideas that self holds very dear, most precious idea, closest to me, part of me. And of course, you challenge that, then you're challenging my very sense of self. And I will defend that to the death. Now, you can make non-duality another belief. I've met plenty of people who believe in non-duality. That's not what I'm speaking of. There's no belief required for this to be as it is. This is regardless of beliefs, in spite of. I don't believe a word I'm saying. You probably don't believe me, do you? I don't believe what I'm telling you. It's not a belief.
Is it reporting, or it's just?
I haven't got a good word for what it is. I can tell you what it's easy, much easier to say what it's not. Yeah. What is it? But I do know people who believe in non-duality. I've met plenty of believers. And they can be fundamentalist believers. But there's nothing fundamentalist about everything, is there? It's all inclusive. No human being's beliefs are closer to the truth than any others, including this. That's why it's very easy to speak about, because it's not relying, I'm not trying to say, believe what I'm telling you. What it feels like is trying to point out the obviousness. And that's not a belief. It's just that. And it feels compassionate. It feels like love to speak about this. It doesn't sound like love to many who hear it, but it does feel like it. It feels, Tony always used to talk about it as the only compassion. And I could never understand it. Never seemed the stupidest thing to say. But I could say it now. Yeah, it's the only compassion. To quote the master, quite a number of people have already gone home. They're the wise ones. Yeah.
But you will not get the money back.
I also paid for tomorrow.
Good point. Don't give it to them.
And boredom still happens.
What happens?
Boredom.
Boredom?
Boredom, yeah.
Yeah, kind of, but not like. No, I was really quite excruciating boredom, as I recall. You trying to say you're bored? Boredom's much. It's not painful. I was a hyperactive kid. I'll tell you a story. I think, had it not been the 1960s, early 70s, I would have been diagnosed ADHD at primary school. I couldn't sit. I couldn't sit still. So the fact that I just sit and it's quite funny. It's a miracle, exactly. Nothing short of miraculous, all of that. But yeah, and boredom was really a thing for me. You know, I've got to be doing. Yeah. So that sounds like that would be much better, but it's not better.
Easier.
Yeah. A lot easier, yeah. Well, boredom is there's if only, isn't it? If only I was doing that, that would be interesting, that would be exciting, that would be, whereas this isn't. I mean, boredom is essentially me saying this isn't good enough. Yeah. Well, and that could still happen, but it wouldn't be the pain that it was for me, because it was. And again, it's that time is so precious. My time is precious. I can't be wasting my time. I mean, that's powerfully. I don't know how it was in your house, but that was very powerfully indoctrinated, conditioned about being we'd I mean, oh God, that's powerful shit, that. Productivity, you know. You're a human machine and your time is precious. And of course, once you're at work, it's even worse because you're wasting your boss's time, not just your own.
But this is important.
Just relatively, yeah. Absolutely not, no. Nothing's important, absolutely. But relatively, of course, everything is relatively. You have a hierarchy of what's important. Now, that's not going to change. That's, you know, as long as you've got thoughts. But the edge is all gone from, you know, nothing's that important. I mean, how does self make the most trivial things? I mean, we're talking utter trivia, really incredibly important. Who do you think you are? You and your important life. That's it. And that is how it feels. So it feels, the whole of life feels so much lighter without the weight of. Because for me, I just remember, you know, when things are not going how they should go for me, it really feels like the end of the world. Literally, the end of the world, because it's my world. Because the world is mine, it feels like the fucking end of the world. I mean, it's hilarious. It's you amongst 8 billion human beings. It's your tiny little insignificant, you know, and there is a wonderful lightness, if that's obvious. But while me is demanding that my life is of great significance to me, then it's all powerful, really, all consuming, with moments of relief. And so self seeks relief from that in all kinds of ways. Escapism. Fantasies die. You won't want that. This isn't all good news. You love your fantasies, your escapist fantasies. Well, they can't appear because where are you going to escape? There's no escape. This is inescapable. It's not what you want. I can't emphasize. You may think that you want what I'm talking about. You don't want it. Because it's the absolute annihilation of any possibility of escape. And maybe you could be honest with yourself, even though there's not one. You could be honest that you do want to escape, and that's what this is. The whole search, the whole fucking shit show, everything you've ever done, all self-improvement, all self-development, every fucking thing, academic, social, relationships, spiritual, doesn't matter, psychological, everything you've ever done is all escapism. Where the fuck did it get you? Where did you get to? You fucking ended up here, look. Yeah, that was not good work, was it? there's no escape from, this is inescapable. And that is the end of the search. And really that's all we're talking about. The sense of self, me, and the whole notion of progress, of development, is that escapism. This isn't enough, but I'm working towards it. And there's nothing to work towards. This isn't leading anywhere. There is no path. There is no journey. All of your story would remain without the sense that it was your story, but it would be utterly empty, worthless. The story would remain, but it would be this my story. It'd be just the same as you telling me your story. Now, you know full well, as me, when I hear someone else's story, I pretend I'm interested, I pretend it's important, but I couldn't give a shit, because the only story I'm really interested in is mine and those who I'm in relationship with, because that's mine too. That's part of my story. But it's so true.
What about
You might be able to listen to other people's stories and actually hear it, because you're not always relating it to your own. Which is, again, is the terrible thing about me is, you know, someone's telling you their story, you just can't wait to get in with your own little, just slightly better experience of a similar thing and just make them feel like shit.
What's the difference now?
Well, the difference is, I'm not interested in, I mean, I can tell you my story sitting here, but I'm not really that interested. You lose total interest in your own story. In the way that it was, lose interest is about right. It's just not, it's not the story that matters the most. All stories are equally just stories. And of course, you will naturally then just find some story. Don't get me wrong, I'll still be bored to tears by some people's story if it's boring. But an interesting story is an interesting story. But I won't think it says anything about them. Now that's different. You know, you listen to someone's story and all the time, self is inferring what it's telling me about them, about their self, about who they are. And of course, self can't help it, but then are they better or worse than me, or just about equal? Very rare, the equal thing. Self doesn't go near equality very often. They're either better or worse. More interesting, less interesting, more intelligent, less intelligent. More successful, less successful. That's the main one. More special, less special. Self's always putting itself in a hierarchy of specialness. Really, I never want to speak to anybody who's less special than me. What have they got to give me? I'm not going to get anything from that. I want to speak to the special ones, because then some of that might rub off on me. Just stories. And it might sound like I'm making the stories a problem. The stories aren't a problem at all. That's all we have. There is only storytelling. All thoughts are stories. So whether you tell it or not,
So is the main difference between us and the monkey that we are aware of our thoughts, or what? That we can imagine?
Well, I've not been a monkey, so it's tricky to say. If I was guessing, it's a bit like the death thing. I mean, you say, what do you think about, it doesn't matter a shit what I say about death, nor anyone else. Does it? But of course, self wants to know. I mean, no one's going to know. Well, I don't know what it's like to be a monkey. If I was guessing, the difference is language, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
So, I mean, I'm not saying chimpanzees, monkeys, gorillas don't think, but their thoughts, this is, no one knows any of this. I don't know why I'd even make this shit up, but I'm going to anyway. I'm guessing they think in feeling visual. So it's visual and it's sensory, like felt sense, because they don't have language. But our thoughts for us are words, aren't they? Not all thoughts are words. I mean, really, there's a lot of false distinctions that we make. So one is between feelings and thoughts. I mean, you can't distinguish between feelings and thoughts. It's a false duality. You know, that I studied psychology a bit, and the whole thing was, which precedes which. So does feeling come from a thought? So you have a thought, and then there's the bodily sensation. There's a felt sense from that. Or is there a bodily felt sense, and then the thought comes about? Well, there's no knowing of that.